I bet people are pissed because there's no titties in this.
It makes sense.
I'm slapping it down. That's why they don't like it. Sorry, listeners. No titties in this movie.
Yeah, there's zero nudity. It's PG-13. It's for the
kids. Welcome to A Cast with No Name. We are your hosts. I'm Jay.
And I'm Matt.
This is episode 53.
Wow.
This episode, we go back to the mines to dig up another hidden gem as we discuss 2015's The Final Girls.
Oh, yeah.
But first, don't forget to visit our website, acastwithnoname.com, where you can write to our email, comment on episodes. And we want to thank you for listening. And if you enjoy this show, please leave us a like or rate us or whatever on Apple or Spotify. It'll help the show find new listeners. Also, we have an Instagram and Twitter, A Cast with No Name. That's the handle.
We caught up with modern times.
Add us. Just add us. No,
doesn't that feel stupid?
No dick pics, please.
Right.
Unless it's in the DMs. Please. Well,
Jay wouldn't mind a couple. Come on.
Please, no dick pics.
Okay.
Just keep them. But yeah. So
right. We're gonna get flooded.
I know.
With just
that's all
pics.
we're gonna get. No comments on episodes. But fuck you, dick pics. Here they come.
Yay.
So yeah. At A Cast with No Name on Twitter and
That's
Instagram.
It.
So,
right. Yep.
So this is our second hidden gem. Yeah, second one. Because the first one we did was Dread.
Yep, that's right.
And then this is our second one.
This is the second one.
The Final Girls. Not to be confused with the other 2015 movie called The Final Girl, which also stars the kid from Hunger Games. That is also in this movie. Alexander Ludwig.
Liam Hemsworth Light.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, not The Final Girl, The Final Girls. So
okay. I never saw The Final Girl.
I did not. The Final Girl has Abigail Breslin in it. If you're watching that one, we are not talking about that one. So
good thing I didn't even know this existed.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now. Okay, you're right.
So, yeah, The Final Girls stars Jesus Christ. Malin Akerman? Malin Akerman.
You're right. There you go.
Fuck my life.
That's not bad. Could be worse.
And God damn it. You do the names.
What, Tessa Farmiga?
Huh? Yeah.
Adam Devine?
Yeah. Well, that one's easy.
Thomas Middleditch?
Yeah, Thomas Middleditch from Silicon Valley.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nina Dobrev?
Yep.
Aaliyah Shawkat?
Yep. She was from
Arrested Development.
Arrested Development.
Right. And Angela Trimber, who does a great job as Tina. She's one of the funnier ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tori N. Thompson, who's also very good in it.
Yeah, plays Blake. And then you have Chloe Bridges, who plays Paula. Who actually, Chloe Bridges is married to Adam Devine.
Really?
They met on a plane ride on the way to make
this
movie. Yeah.
No kidding.
So,
wow.
Love finds a way.
Love finds a way. I always wondered if Adam Devine had a hard time finding like wife material because he plays like the cocky douchebag in every
all the time. No, he's
movie.
Funny. He's probably the easiest. He probably gets so much thrown at him all the time.
Probably. He's probably a real nice guy too.
Oh yeah. We know.
Yeah, I know Adam.
We know. Meanwhile, he's punching homeless people in the face right now and kicking puppies as we speak.
Right. Well, you just can't play the douchebag on and off camera. It would be exhausting. I would think. Well. You would think.
Well,
yes.
I do it without
Jay,
even
tell
being
me,
on
is it
camera.
exhausting?
I get my full 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So The Final Girls came out in 2015. It's directed by Todd Strauss Schulson.
Yep, that's right.
And written by M.A. Fortin and Joshua John Miller.
Correct.
A young woman grieving the loss of her mother, a famous scream queen from the 1980s, finds herself pulled into the world of her mom's most famous movie. Reunited, the women must fight off the film's maniacal killer.
Where did you first watch this?
I actually heard about this movie from a different podcast and the podcast was not Film Junk, sorry, but Film Junk's pretty good. It's F This Movie. So
F This Movie.
Yeah, it's a podcast based out of Chicago, and Patrick Bromley, I believe, is the main guy.
Doesn't ring any bells. Shout out to Patrick.
Yes, but he talked about this and gave it rave reviews. I had never heard of it, and I'm not big into horror, but they said that it was kind of feel goody. It feel like, in his words, it was a very sweet film, and I was like, all right, I can play with that. So checked it out, watched it, and I was like, oh my god, this is really fucking good.
Yeah.
So that's how I found out about it. How'd you find out about it?
You.
Oh, good.
You recommended it to me.
So like herpes, it passes from one person to the next. It's slowly.
In a good way.
Yes.
This is the kind of VD
It's the herpes
you
you do want.
That's right. Yeah. So you trusted the opinion of that particular podcaster, and you gave it a shot.
Yes. Well, one of his favorite movies is Back to the Future, and
so
like we had similar tastes. We have similar tastes in movies. However, we do disagree on some things. I think he's more of a Roger Moore fan than I am, but we both think very highly of On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
I gotcha. Okay.
So we some of the podcasts that I listened to of movies that he had done, we shared the same opinion. So that's why I kind of watched this, because other than that, horror, I'm not a
yeah, you're not
huge.
Well, I'm gonna have to take it with a grain of salt then, because Roger Moore, I can't even get through them.
Yeah,
can't get through the
tough.
Roger Moore days.
It's very tough.
It is.
And he's not a huge. I don't think he's a huge. It's been years since I've listened to the movies that he did, but I mean, I'm of the standpoint that they're fucking horrible and they're god awful, and anyone who likes him a little bit more than that is probably likes him more than
right.
I guess he has more patience than me and more compassion. But.
Sure. But if you're a hardcore James Bond fan, I get it. But if you're not, it'd be tough to recommend a Roger Moore James Bond movie to the average.
Yeah, it's a totally different genre. It goes into camp and slapstick. It's like the '60s Batman. Like, it's kind of fun to like look at a scene or two and be like, yeah, that's a little ridiculous. But to sit through 7 or however many 6 movies, I think
it'd be a little rough.
It was tough.
Right.
That was the longest stretch when I made your sister watch all the Bond movies.
She told me she wanted to kill herself.
Roger Moore tends to have that effect on people.
I'm sure. I haven't seen them in a long time. I'm sure.
They're not well. I mean, there's a couple.
Did they
like
age well?
No.
In terms of the dialogue.
No.
Okay.
No. It's
not copacetic with today's sensibilities.
No. Which none of the Bond films are, but that's why they're so good, is because they are time capsules of pop culture in each of those movies. But but no, it's just you could tell what era Hollywood was going in throughout Roger Moore's progression. You have Moonraker, them going to space because Star Wars did well, and Star Trek was coming out.
Kind of
in
piggybacking on the current fad.
Yeah, but it just went into the camp and goofiness and ridiculousness. Now there are a couple that were fine, like The Spy Who Loved Me wasn't bad. There's some weird elements to it, but that was tolerable. And then
Squirrel.
Yeah.
I know we're supposed to talk about the Final Girls, but anyway. So back to what that podcaster originally said. It's like a horror, but it's a feel good kind of.
Yeah, he called it a very sweet movie, and overall, it kind of plays off of doesn't play off any trope, but it kind of mimics a little bit. Some people compared it to Jumanji. Is the first thing that pops into their head when you describe the kind of the plot of the film.
Sure.
But also Last Action Hero.
Of course.
So the main character is going into the actual movie.
Sure.
And instead of Last Action Hero, to where the kid's kind of finding it out as the story's progressing, this is a B movie that everyone loves, and there's a couple of characters that are well aware of what happens in the movie, while there's a couple other characters that aren't.
Right.
But,
and when you recommended this to me, I instantly thought of Last Action Hero, and I actually do like Last Action Hero. I know a lot of people shit on it, but I do like that movie. So I was more than willing to give it a shot. Yeah, and I don't know if I would classify this as. I know it has horror elements, but it's not really.
It's not. I would
movie. I
would say it's more. I mean, it's fantasy because something like magical happens. Like there's no explanation how they end up in the movie. In the movie, I think they cut through the screen to escape a theater fire, and then all of a sudden they're in the movie. And it's comedy.
Yeah,
and there's some dramatic elements in it, but yeah, you're never really scared at all in this movie.
It's not bloody.
Yeah, it's not
at
bloody.
all.
It's
It's actually PG-13.
yeah, it's brightly lit.
Yes.
It is a very bright, lively film. And I think it's a smart choice going that direction because I think the two tones that they play with, one is it borders like on parody, because they are playing with tropes of horror films, but also so you have the comedic elements there, but it's also dealing with some fairly heavy subject matter. Most of it being the main character dealing with the death of her mother, and trying to get over that. And I think playing those two tones, it does very, very well. If you added in a third thing to where being horror and being scary, I feel like it would have gotten muddled and it probably would not have been as effective as what it was. Because there's not one single moment that you're like on the edge of your seat of, oh my God, it's more, they kind of play it safe, which is good.
Right. It's not trying to scare you.
Yeah.
The movie's not trying to scare you.
Yeah.
No. It definitely plays more like a fantasy. I would say that. That's how I would describe it. Because when I didn't even realize it was PG-13 until after I watched it. I just assumed it was rated R.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of get that vibe that maybe it is because of Adam Devine and him being so like misogynistic.
Yeah, he is pretty crass and
crass or whatever. And then you think it's violent because there's some moments where Billy stabs some of the kids, but on rewatch it's like there's no blood anywhere.
Yeah, it's usually shot
over the top.
Somewhat artistically. Like there's one to where you have like a nice silhouette of kind of like the sunsetting sky or whatever, or it's they just change the camera angles. But yeah, there's no blood, there's no gore, and all the violence that happens is just insinuated to where they don't actually show anything, but you get a general idea of what's going on.
Right.
But the other good thing about this is, since I wasn't a horror fan, the guy whose podcast I listen to, he loves horror, and he's a big fan of 80s horror, and but I never was. But this movie, you don't need to be aware of 80s horror. If you've seen a couple of horror films, you would get the jokes that play. And
even if you haven't seen a horror film, I think you would.
Yeah, because you'd probably be aware of the tropes, and because it's very surface level, but it's not done in a boring way. It's still fun the way they go about doing things, as far as calling it out, like the lazy writing, the douchey guys, the mysterious figure always walking, but just always like being right there behind you, kind of a thing. And they even call out the tropes that they're talking about. So it's not like you need to have some in-depth knowledge either of horror movies or slasher movies from the 70s or 80s.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of the film techniques and everything? I mean, it was shot for $4.5 million.
I like the camera work in this. I mean, it's a clean picture. It's brightly lit. So we were talking, it has a similar look as far as Die in a Gunfight did.
Yeah.
And that was around the same budget. Granted, that was made in 2021. This was 2015. So this is probably the equivalent of like maybe $5 million, $5.5 maybe. But you can tell some of the shots were planned out because there's a couple of unique ones that were thrown in there. There's one at the beginning, right before the car crash, and this isn't a spoiler because this is how the main character's mother dies, is they're driving in a car, and then you just see this overhead shot of the street. The car drives into frame, and then the camera snaps into motion with the car.
Yeah.
It's probably done with simple compositing, but
it's pretty cool.
It was unique, and I had never seen that before, and I enjoyed that. So there's some things like that they do. There's a camera trick when they're at the camp and they're trying to run away, and the camera just kind of keeps orbiting around, and you can see some kind of blending a little bit of stitching the scenes together, but it's effective and it works, and it keeps it interesting to where they're mixing in enough I guess computer graphics to where it kind of keeps it fun and unique and interesting, but not so much to where it obviously looks fake. I mean, there's the car crash at the beginning, but I mean, they don't go overstep their bounds as far as what their budget will allow. So
they make it interesting with the camera roll as the car's rolling, instead of just doing a wide shot and then watching the car go, rolling on itself. And I think most of the budget was probably spent on effects wise on the transition from 1980s camp to 1957 camp, where they had like
the squiggly lines coming through,
coming down.
Yeah, yeah, because they did a couple of practical effects. One was the car crash on the camp when they run into the pole and it explodes. That was practical, and I think the building blowing up, that was a practical explosion.
I liked when they were shooting arrows at Billy too.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even try to like do a camera trick. There was like an arrow on a string, and they just followed the arrow as it was going into Billy. That was, it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were talking about the lighting, I think their lighting choice when they enter the movie, how bright it is, it's just, it stands out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it feels like kind of fairy tale-ish.
Oh yeah.
And you really don't get into the darker, dramatic lighting until it's at night.
Yeah.
During the climax, but even then they break it up to kind of put some humor in there, but also it kind of helps too, because that during the evening, during the climax, is the probably most dramatic element and more emotional part of the movie, and having that darker lit storm in the background definitely helped that scene, because I think that's probably one of the best scenes in the movie.
Sure.
But yeah, just what they had to work with, and the talent they were able to get, and the performances they were able to get, because I feel everyone played their part really, really well in this, and because it was goofy, and you had actors that were able to deliver that portion of it because they needed to, but you also had the dramatic elements. That's kind of hard to balance, but I think they just nailed it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and I think the combination of all those things, we haven't talked about the script or the acting in detail yet, but the production with the choices they made, and I think the script is just really, really good. All that combined, it made it feel like it was more than a $4.5 million movie to me. Mm-hmm. It seemed like a bigger budget movie.
Yeah, and the story was tighter. It's 90 minutes long, or 92 or 91, whatever. It's right there, right at the hour and a half point. But they don't overstuff it with side plots or anything like that that they can't really address. It's more of the main character dealing with the death of her mother, and the group being a part of the movie. Then they're trying to figure a way to get out. There's a couple of side plots of or subplots of the main character not being as close friends with one of the characters, but that gets dealt with fairly quickly.
Sure.
But they address all of them. Everything else is just like the main points, and everything else isn't filler, but it's just kind of entertaining, laughing kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So it is a very tight story, and the only part I think it does kind of drag is during the lake scene, when they're setting up for a booby trap, and the three girls are kind of talking to where they're Nina Dopreve's character is explaining why she stopped being friends with Max, the main character. That kind of felt
unnecessary,
but I mean, but you wanted. I understand why it's in there, because you need to like Vicky's character with Nina Dopreve's character.
You want to sympathize with her because of what happens to her later on.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. Every time I see Adam Devine pop up, especially the line where he's like, I'll help you with those melons. I'm talking about her boobs, guys. I'm like, that's Jay. That's like a Jay line.
I saw that trailer today, and that line was in there. I was like, that sounds like something I would say.
It sounds exactly like what you would say. See, guys, I'm talking about her boobs, right? I can explain the joke.
Beat it into the ground to where it's no longer funny.
Right.
That's
yeah.
the key to humor.
He's so good in it.
Oh, yeah.
He's really good.
He's good. And it's funny because the character that he plays, he physically does not look like that character.
No, that's why it works.
And that's why it works, because he's not goofy looking or anything, but he's just average looking.
Average dude.
To where you would think Alexander Ludwig would be playing that character.
Right.
And Alexander Ludwig plays more of a character that's just a normal guy. Like, you look at him, you think he's going to be an asshole, or he's going to... Nope. He's
pretty
fine.
Straight-laced guy.
Good guy. Just perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so good. Thomas Middleditch plays a Thomas Middleditch character, kind of similar to
Silicon Valley.
Yeah, Silicon Valley, which is fine.
Yeah,
because it's just that awkward, nerdy kind of character.
Well, his character serves the reason why they go to the movie theater in the first place. So you need someone like that. I thought Tessa Farmiga, awesome.
Yeah,
I don't think you could have asked for so she carries the emotional weight of the movie, and I don't know if you could ask for a better performance given what you got.
Yeah, the
resource wise.
Yeah, the final scene with her and Malin.
I think it's Malin.
Her character is called Nancy, so
yes.
that I can say. So the final scene with those two in it is so good.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we did a commentary for this 2 weeks ago. A week, was it 2 weeks?
Maybe a week ago.
But we did it at 3:30 in the morning, and we were drunk.
Had a few Chardonnays.
Yeah, had a few mimosas, and we were like, "Oh yeah, let's do a commentary of this.
Let's just do it."
And we haven't listened to it.
No,
we were gonna post it, but we haven't listened to it yet.
Not
so
yet.
There's probably it could be 5 minutes of us just rambling, and then 85 minutes of us just kind of sitting watching the movie. We don't really remember. I know we were talking throughout, but we don't know what we were saying.
Yeah,
so
what was said is a mystery.
Maybe we'll post it. Leave us 100 likes or something somewhere, and then we'll post it.
Yeah.
But I do remember when we were watching it, we were both just kind of shut up during that scene, and the acting between those two. I mean, it was awesome. There weren't two grown men with tears in their eyes in a basement. That
didn't happen.
Holding each other,
spooning.
There wasn't that.
No,
but it wasn't far off.
We both called our moms right after.
Yeah, I love you. But I mean the performances are great, and those two nailed it. And
you just don't expect it. For a movie like this,
you don't expect it, but they do such a good job too at the beginning of the movie of establishing that relationship within. I think it was like 3 minutes. It wasn't that long. And the fact that they can establish that relationship and then have that emotional weight pay off at the end with so little introduction is fantastic.
Yeah.
And just the filmmaking techniques, the long shots of Max when she first sees her mother in the van, just like kind of leading up to it and just kind of going back and kind of touching and kind of nudging that emotional progress along throughout the movie is great. I think lesser movies would have concentrated more on the comedy or more on the gore, and
one or the other.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have been as good.
So after we watched this, I'm like, because I hadn't seen. Well, me and you saw it when we were hammered, and then I watched it again before talking about it, and I hadn't seen it in I want to say 3 years, but it came to me that this is a movie about grief. Mm-hmm. It's about grief. That's what this movie's about. And I didn't know that the guy who co-wrote it, Joshua John Miller, his dad's Jason Miller, who played
Father Karras
on The Exorcist, and this was his way of dealing with that grief was to write this. Mm-hmm. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and it's done such a good job. I mean, this movie was shopped around because I think this movie was first pitched in the late 2000s, and it kind of took that long for it to kind of get developed. But when different studios were kind of looking at it, some of that shit was going to be cut out to where they didn't want the emotional parts of it. They wanted more blood. They wanted more of a comedy horror thing. And then I think eventually, Stage 6 and Groundswell, I think Sony bought it, and they kind of kept those elements in there, which is good. Sadly, I don't hear a lot of people talking about this movie.
No,
I never would have found out about it if I wasn't listening to some random podcast. So that's why I wanted to kind of bring it up in ours, because maybe someone hasn't heard of this, and they'll give it a shot, because it's definitely a movie that's worth watching.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think is probably one of the better movies that came out in 2015.
I agree with you.
It was like this, Mad Max, and I can't really think of anything else that came out in 2015. But
those are the two that stand out.
Yeah, it's
there's Mad Max, The Final Girls, and that's it. That's all. The Revenant came out that year. I enjoy Revenant. I know you don't like it. But
yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, that one I felt like Leo was just like if someone presented a baby to him and like Leo, you got to eat this baby, give you an Oscar, he would have done it. And it's like that kind of it just fell over the top.
Oh, you think he won the Oscar because he ate a fish?
Part of it or whatever liver, whatever the fuck.
Ate the heart of a
it was in the
buffalo?
press like, oh, he got that deep, and I'm like. No, they gave him the Oscar because they should have given it to him in
for the
Aviator. They should have given it to him for Wolf of Wall Street. They should have given it to him for Django Unchained. There's like a bunch of, the same thing, reason why they gave it to Scorsese for Departed.
Right.
Was because Departed was
They gave it to Denzel for Training Day.
Yeah.
Even though that was a really good role.
Yeah.
And not
it's because, not for Malcolm X.
Or Malcolm X, yeah. Yeah. But no, I agree with you. This is... So I looked at the numbers, $4.5 million budget. It didn't have a theatrical distribution, so the box office was zero, but DVDs and Blu-ray sales was just over $1 million. So this movie lost money, unless they sold it to a streamer for whatever, licensing agreement or whatever. I don't know if it would even make up the $3 million that it would to break even, but it's a shame because it's one of those rare... it feels bigger than $4.5 million. I think it would play well, like in theaters. I don't know if it did well and didn't get a theatrical run because it just didn't get a word of mouth or it wasn't marketed well. I think if it had a marketing push, I think it would have had a shot to.
Yeah.
I think of movies like My Big Fat Greek Wedding that made $250 million. Like, it was a fine movie, but if the
was
Final
that Miramax?
Girls, yeah, I think it was.
That's probably why.
If the Final Girls had something like that, I think it would have made more than $4.5 million.
Yeah, and the problem with it, in any given year, I forget how many movies, like how many studio movies get released. It's like something ridiculous. It's like 120, and I can only imagine that number being just massive now, to where. Yeah, I think it was a misstep for Sony. Of course, they haven't had a very good track record as of late. They got Spider-Man, and I think that's about it anymore.
Spider-Man, yeah.
But yeah, I feel like this would have been one that just played well. I'm surprised they didn't try to go into a theater because you had some. Adam Devine was probably between him and Alan Ackerman, but with her, I think people recognize her, but don't necessarily know her. They were like, oh, she's from Watchmen, or she's from Harold and Kumar, or
The Heartbreak Kid.
Yeah, The Heartbreak Kid. I forgot about that. So she's had some bit roles. Nina Dobrev, she was in Vampire Diaries. But I feel like, I'm surprised it didn't get a theatrical release.
Yeah. I think nowadays you don't need star recognition. If you have a good idea, I think you could roll it out and make your money, especially if it's $4.5 million. I think of like the Saw movies that have no stars, and then it makes $80 million on like a $2.5 million budget.
That's a genre film, so
right.
People go there expecting to be scared. To where this, I could see. Because I think what makes this this movie so good are those emotional elements. Mixed in with comedy, I feel like you would have to, maybe you just market it as a straight comedy and leave the emotional elements in. I think it would probably work. But maybe studios couldn't pin it down to where,
right.
I don't know, but I can't imagine no one thinking oh yeah, we don't want to release this in a theater. And maybe it's just because of test screenings, because they had a couple different test screenings. They had one to where, spoiler alert, Max and Chris, Tessa, whatever, Formiga, and Alexander Ludwig, they're the only survivors at the end.
Okay.
So they had one ending to where they were just the only survivors. Then they shot another one to where everyone survived. And the footage that they used, they ended up kind of mixing the two. But more or less everyone survived at the end. After the credits rolled, they all kind of wake up in a hospital, but they're in the hospital of part two. because they were too sad. Like the audience like voted it as a crap ending when just the two actors survived, but they also voted a crap ending when everyone survived. So that's why they use kind of elements of it together. But I can't. I'd like to know the dumbasses they got for this test screening. Like, I mean, I'm sure it's just normal people off the street, which I'm like, how could they not like that? Their soul is dog shit.
I don't know how you not like this movie.
Yeah.
At least a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's not that it's like the subject matter, like, because it is dealing with grief. It's dealing with loss, and you don't need to lose a parent to be able to get it, or to have it resonate with you at all.
Yeah.
And that's the weird thing. Like, I feel like this movie is so general in its appeal, or should be so general in its appeal, because everyone has experienced loss in some way or another. And I think that's where this movie hits, is just that feeling of wanting to hold on, or wanting to maintain that connection as much as possible.
Right.
But
everyone's seen an 80s horror movie.
Yeah.
They can relate to the satire in it, of course.
I mean, everyone likes to laugh.
Right, and it's funny.
Yeah.
It's not like there's stretches of the only times where like the comedy isn't there really is during the moments between Nancy and Tessa Farmiga when they're having their one-on-one conversations. Everything else is like there's comedy.
Yeah.
Sprinkled in those gaps.
Yeah. And even if it's not like overtly laughing, haha, it's like during the flashback, like, oh, they ran into the subtitles that were in the bottom of they do some things like that to keep it kind of moving or entertaining, keep it light. And yeah, I don't know why this isn't as big of a movie.
You screen it with critics. They love it. You know, I think I got like a 78%, which again, I would have to go through I would love to go through a Rotten Tomato score here from a critic who didn't like it, just to get his.
Yeah, because I mean the rating on this is on IMDb is 6.5.
That's way too low.
Way too fucking low.
Way too.
There
low.
is dog shit rated at 7.5 currently, and like I
that doesn't make sense.
I don't know. I think part of it is recency effect. With when a new movie comes out, people just immediately score it's the best thing they've ever seen. Blah 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 blah. But like John Wick 4, I don't think John Wick 4 is a better movie than this.
I agree with you.
I think this is a better movie.
I agree.
Now, John Wick 4 is a better action movie, but as far as story, emotional beats, and an emotional journey you go along with the movie, this hands down a better movie. And the fact that it's only at 6.5, I'm like, what?
Yeah, got a 74% with the critics and a 71% with the audience, which maybe you're just like movie snobs, because I don't know how 7 out of 10 or 3 out of 10 people would not like this movie.
Yeah, I don't either.
There's terrible movies on here with 98% audience scores. I don't get it. And I don't consider myself a snob. I mean, I like John Wick Chapter 4.
Yeah.
I think it's
probably
going to be the best action movie I'll watch this year. No doubt.
I don't. Yeah, because I'm not. I don't know. I'm kind of a snob. I don't know. If I don't like something, I just don't like something. And maybe that could be it. Maybe there's something in this movie that strikes a chord that strikes a negative chord with 30% of the population. All
right. I'm going to give you an example.
Okay.
So, CJ Prince, way too indie. 5 out of 10. It's disappointing to watch it coast along on its own concept rather than try, anything remotely interesting or subversive. That pisses me. It's like, what?
Yeah, they just got done reading a Ryan Johnson interview, they just learned that word submersive or submissive. Subversive. Fucking dumb. Fucking stupid.
I love you calling him dumb.
God, that's how stupid that word. I'm tired of that fucking word. God damn it. It's subversive. You don't expect it. Yeah, but you can't just. I don't know.
All right, this is a good one, Jay. Jay Olson from Cinemix Tape. 2 out of 5. Cut rate CGI, shaky performances, and a frequently unintelligible screenplay sink the ship. I think all 3 of those things that he just mentioned were were the strengths of this movie.
Yeah, you shoddy CGI. Well, you have a $4.5 million budget. Like,
Right, you're not seeing a Marvel movie.
yeah, and even with Marvel CGI now is dog shit.
It's terrible, yeah.
Because they're churning out those fucking things for those poor animators.
Shaky performances. I don't think we were watching the same movie.
Yeah, he was probably watching The Final Girl.
He's probably watching
I don't know. I haven't seen that. That could be a fine movie, but I don't know.
It could be fine. And then an unintelligible screenplay. Like, it's one of the best scripts.
Yeah,
like it's
it's
so
fun.
It's so
it's
good.
Tight. It's tight like a tiger.
It's awesome.
I bet people are pissed because there's no titties in this.
It makes sense.
I'm slapping it down. That's why they don't like it. Sorry, listeners. No titties in this movie.
Yeah, there's zero nudity. It's PG-13. It's for the kids. Yeah. I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. I mean,
so what I was gonna say was, if it was like a higher critic score and an audience score, which I think it well deserves, maybe you could just market it off of that. Like, I don't know what the TV spot would be or what the trailer would be, but if you highlighted that everyone liked it, I would think, wouldn't that warrant to get it like a theatrical run, at least for a couple weeks? Or no? How does it work?
I don't know.
It's a good movie.
I don't understand the decision making sometimes with some movies that get greenlit and that get pushed to theaters. And it's maybe just hindsight's 2020, but sometimes I feel like whenever I read a movie announcement that they're making this, I would nope, that sounds stupid. Like, that sounds ridiculous.
Right.
Sometimes I'm wrong, but most of the time I'm like, that sounds stupid, and then it flops, and I'm like, I fucking told you so, as I yell at my computer screen in my basement. So there's instances like that where I'm like, yeah, that's not going to make any money. Who would want to see that? Who is this for? What market research are they basing this decision off of? And that could be it. Maybe they just did like marketing surveys, and the responses they got from this, they figured, you know what, it's not worth releasing in theaters. Let's see what we can get on streaming, or because this is around that time, where streaming started taking a hold, and they were thinking, well, maybe we can make a little bit on this, and maybe a little bit on physical.
You think
media.
if it was released today, it would have gotten like this is a Netflix film,
yeah,
or an Amazon original.
Yeah.
I think so too.
This feels like it could be a Netflix film,
and it would actually be good.
Yes, and well, hopefully,
because those streaming movies are.
But here's the thing with the Netflix ones, then you get into there's no supervision, and people do whatever the fuck they want.
That's right.
So I think this had a little bit. There was some stuff cut out from this movie, but I'm not sure if the movie would still have that as much of an effect.
Right.
If the writer and director did whatever they wanted.
Do you think this would have been a better movie if it had a bigger budget?
No, absolutely not.
I don't either.
It's one of those things to where what makes it good is doing well with what they have.
Right, I agree.
And the only thing I feel like a bigger budget would have given it was maybe a better car wreck scene at the beginning, which is not needed. You get the point. And then maybe it would just added more ridiculousness, over the top stuff. But for the movie it's being modeled after an 80s slasher movie, which those movies didn't have a lot of budget.
Right.
Those were pretty low budgets.
You would want it to look cheesy, like when Adam Driver gets bit in half when he falls.
Yeah.
It's fine that it looks bad.
Yeah.
Because you're in a bad B movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it would have been more sanitized humor, and I feel like more some of the humor is obvious, but it would have lost something because maybe the urgency is not there. I mean, you're going to have different environments. You're going to have now we have a 35-day shoot schedule as opposed to a 25.
Right.
So,
and I think what you're getting at is it's pretty perfect the way it is right now.
And
I wouldn't really want to.
There's
change
nothing that could be improved with more money. I
agree with you. Yep. Which is why it's a shame that more people don't know about it. It's really good. If I were to make a top 5 list of obviously of that year, this would definitely make it. I don't know. I mean, of that decade,
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I could be accused of hyperbole right now.
I mean, yeah. I mean, this isn't the best movie ever made, but it's very, very good.
It's a very good low budget movie.
Yeah, and it is very good. But it is a it's a very nice movie. I mean, yeah.
Yep.
I like it a lot.
Yep. All right, Jay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Go see The Final Girls.
Yeah.
If you haven't already seen it.
Yeah.
I recommend it. It's great.
Yeah. You're not gonna. You'll tear up a little bit, but it leaves you feeling happy.
It does.
And it's definitely it's worth the watch. We don't know where it's streaming, but The Final Girls.
Yes.
Watch it. I'm sure it's somewhere you can get it on Amazon or whatever.
Or
Netflix.
buy it.
Yeah, buy it.
It's worth the buy.
It's on Blu-ray. I got it on Blu-ray.
Yeah, you're the one.
Yep, I was the one that bought it.
You're the one.
If you want to borrow it, just DM us.
Yeah.
On Instagram or Twitter.
Yeah.
And we'll mail it to you. But
there you go.
It's got to be mailed back. No scratches on the disc, or I find your ass.
Yes.
If I get it back, there's a scratch. I'm in my car.
Yep.
I'm on the fucking hunt.
And they're gonna send you a dick pic.
Yeah,
back
just
with it,
there's no disc. It's just stuff with
It's
dick
just stuff,
pics, like
yes.
Polaroids, just old like 80s.
Do those still exist?
I don't know.
No, I don't. You're aging yourself.
All right, so that was the Final Girls. Join us next time as we fly off to the second start of the right and straight on till morning as we talk about Spielberg's 1991 fantasy film Hook. Bangarang, bitches.
Yeah. Why wasn't that bigger than it was supposed to be, Jay?
I probably have a couple ideas.
Oh, do you? Okay. Fair enough.
But as always, comment on our episodes at acastwithnoname.com or shoot us an email. Like us on Instagram and Twitter, or follow us, or whatever you kids do on that.
On the social
medias. It's a series of tubes. So, but yeah.
Till next time, Jay.
Till next time, Matt.